Elmina Castle was erected by the Portuguese in 1482 as Castelo de São Jorge da Mina, St. George of the Mine Castle. I hope I pronounced that right. Also known as Castelo da Mina or simply Mina. In present-day Elmina, Ghana, formerly the Golden Coast. It was the first trading post built on the Gulf of Guinea and the oldest European building in existence south of the Sahara. Elmina is located along the southern Cape Coast region of Ghana, west of Accra, approximately 100 to 120 km away. The town itself is primarily a fishing port, with a bustling commercial scene and lively atmosphere. Famous on account of the colonial fort built here in 1482 by the Portuguese, the small fishing village of Elmina is a picturesque stop-off along the Cape Coast steeped in history. First established as a trade settlement, the castle later became one of the most important stops on the route of the Atlantic slave trade. The Dutch seized the fort from the Portuguese in 1637 after an unsuccessful attempt to some extent in 1596 and took over all the Portuguese Gold Coast in 1642. The slave trade continued under the Dutch until 1814. In 1872, the Dutch Gold Coast, including the fort, became a possession of the Great Britain. The Gold Coast, which is now Ghana, gained its independence in 1957 from Britain and had control of the castle. Elmina Castle is a historical site and was a major filming location for Winner Hestog's 1987 drama film Cobra Verde. The castle is recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage Site. Elmina, like other West African slave fortresses, housed luxury suites for the Europeans in the upper levels. The slave dungeons below were cramped and filthy, each cell often housing as many as 200 people at a time, without enough space to even lie down. The floor of the dungeon, as a result of centuries of impacted filth and human excrement, is now several inches higher than it was when it was built. Outbreaks of malaria and yellow fever were common. Staircases led directly from the governor's chambers to the women's dungeon below, making it easy for him to select personal concubines from amongst the women. At the seaboard side of the castle was the door of no return, the infamous portal through which slaves boarded the ships that would take them on the treacherous journey across the Atlantic known as the Middle Passage. By the 18th century, 30,000 slaves on their way to the North and South America passed through Elmina's door of no return each year. As early as the 1500s, the settlers' interest turned to slave trade in light of the growing demand for human labor in the New World, the Americas and the Caribbean. From holding gold, ivory and other wares, the castles gradually imprisoned slaves who were reduced to yet another commodity. The majestic fortresses along the Ghana's breathtaking coast housed dark dungeons, overflowing with misery and despair, right up until the slave trade was gradually abolished by each of the colonial powers in the first half of the 1800s. By this point, the irreversible and immeasurable damage was done, and from West Africa alone, it is estimated that 6 million slaves had been shipped to other countries. About 10 to 15% perished at sea during the so-called Middle Passage, never reaching their final destination. Such an environment of harsh contrasts, the castle had some extravagant chambers devoid of the stench and misery of the dungeons. Only a couple of meters below, for example, the British governor and officers' quarters were spacious and airy, with beautiful parquet floors and scenic views of the blue waters of the Atlantic. There was also a chapel in the castle enclosure for the officers, traders, and their families as they went about their normal day-to-day life, completely detached from the unfathomable human suffering they were consciously inflicting. Under the rule of the Dutch West Indies Company, around 30,000 slaves a year passed through Elmina's door of no return, right up until 1814, when the Dutch slave trade was abolished, 7 years after the British. Ceded to the British in 1872, Elmina Castle was hardly in use until Ghana's independence. Thereafter, it became a training center for Ghanaian police recruits and surprisingly a school for some time, before being converted into a history museum. You can tour the castle with a guide for Ghanaian cedi 3,000, which is about 40 US dollar cents. And don't forget your camera, as the views here are terrific. If you fancy strolling around at your own pace, entrance to Elmina Castle costs 1,000 Ghanaian cedi. Opposite, you can visit Fort St. Jago, the primary defense for the castle against its many invasions. And it has now been converted into a guest house, providing visitors with accommodation. The entrance and tour prices are the same as the castle. Please like and subscribe, follow for more content. Have a wonderful day.